Welcome to Winning Inside, the show where we follow the journey from feeling defeated to winning. Here are your hosts, Cheddy Matthews and Michelle Wickman.
Hello, amazing people. Welcome to the Winning Inside podcast, where we discuss real issues, insights, and solutions to help you thrive in your day-to-day lives. We know life happens, and we can choose to be a spectator or a participant. Hey, Cheddy.
Michelle, how are you today?
I am great.
It is so beautiful outside.
Oh my God, totally. Wow. Yes.
But you remember like how it was 12 hours ago, right?
Yes, and I loved that too. So we live in Southern California, in San Diego, as we've referenced multiple times. And it rarely rains here, right? In the last, 3 days, 2 out of the 3 days, it's just been storming and raining. And I've loved every second of it except driving on the freeway. Because our roads are not equipped for heavy rain.
Is it the roads or the drivers? I'm not sure which one it is.
It's both for sure, but our roads are not equipped. I mean, there is standing water everywhere and you're getting splashed and it's just like chaos, right? And so I try to avoid being on the freeway. I take extra long trips and everything. But anyway, it's been beautiful rain and now the skies are so unreal.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful out there. And I was up way too late last night or this morning. So I heard the rain all through the night. I actually didn't think it was rain. I was like, did something fall outside? Did somebody crash? I went outside and was like, oh, someone is just pouring buckets. It was cats and dogs.
I love it.
Me too.
My window is always open when it's raining. I mean, not all the way open, but like open so I can hear it.
Yeah.
But you just made the most of an amazing day yesterday, which was your birthday.
It was my birthday yesterday. Yes, it sure was. Love it.
Happy birthday.
Oh,
I mean, I know I already said it, but happy birthday officially on our podcast.
I appreciate you. It was actually a really good day. I don't usually celebrate birthdays, but I'm learning as I'm accumulating more of them that people aren't afforded that opportunity. So I'm actually taking the moment to celebrate nowadays, which is something I've never really done before. So I'm actually grateful and a lot of well wishes that I will get back to people and say thank you. I appreciate all the calls and the wishes and the text messages and people singing songs and leaving messages, which was pretty cool. So whoever did that, I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, and thank you.
I promise I won't suffer you through that.
You know what? I love it. I love it. My mom does it to me. Oh. And then she sings. It's so funny because she goes into the "How old are you now?" And I busted out laughing. I'm thinking, if anybody knows how old I am, it should be you. But last year, I didn't realize how old I was until like mid-year. So on this birthday, she actually reminded me on the day how old I was. I'm like, thanks, Ma. Yep, I'm that old. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you,
She's on top of it. Yeah, because I remember distinctly having this conversation with you last year.
Yeah.
And I have no idea.
I don't know.
And I said, let's work backwards.
I broke out my fingers and started counting back. Carry the 10, this. Yeah, I did that last year. So this year, I know how old I am.
I love it. And it's been an incredible year of collaboration with you and partnership with you. And in honor of your birthday, I wanted to make this podcast all about you, Cheddy Ched.
Oh man, about me. That's pretty cool.
Well, and I think it's just a great opportunity to help our listeners get to know you a little bit better, and even the ones who already do know you. Mm-hmm. Maybe even just learn a little bit more about you that they haven't known before. Because as you know, we're always changing, we're always evolving, and new stories and new lessons and new aha moments transpire every year, not just on our birthday.
Yes, that is so true. I can't disagree with what you said. You're right. So
let's start with the basics.
Let's start the show.
Cheddy? Who are you?
Who is Cheddy? Who am I? I am from everywhere and I am from nowhere. That is one thing I feel that wherever I go, I can make it home. I love that. I love people. I love smiling. And I've had an interesting storied life. I feel like I've moved a lot. Grew up in London, born in London, moved to New York, then joined the beautiful Marine Corps and went all over the planet Earth. Enjoyed that too. And now ended up in a place that I fell in love with in the 90s and decided this is going to be home. And I came to San Diego and I love it. Every day I'm here, I just fall in love with this place. But that's an interesting journey in and of itself because it's been some strange twists and turns along the way. But all I can think of is every twist and turn I've taken has delivered me to this space right now, to this microphone right now. And I think it's beautiful because there's been a lot of lessons in that, a lot of wins, a lot of losses, a lot of what in the world? I call them reference points where you're just like, how did I survive that? Or how did that even happen to me? Or, just that was the coolest moment. Those little accent points on your life where you just, things that just happen that you just don't forget that leave this indelible mark on your life. I feel like I've had a bunch of those, good, bad, ugly, and crazy, the whole gamut, the whole spectrum. So who the heck am I? I don't know. How does a British guy join the military? That was easy. That was interesting of itself. I was recruited by a Navy, a petty officer in the Navy. And I'm like, I'm not going to join the US military. I'm British. Yeah, all I'm going to say is after 2-3 days of talking to this guy, he's razzle-dazzle worked, had me singing the Navy hymn. I was going to the Navy. I wasn't a citizen, so you can join the military without being a citizen, as I did. And there was a job that I had qualified for, and he said, it doesn't exist anymore. The truth was, I wasn't a citizen. I couldn't get the job. I couldn't get a security clearance. If he said that, I'd have said, okay. Well, he told me the job didn't exist. And while I was in one of the meetings waiting to, ship out, deploy, or not deploy, but just enlist, somebody came back and said, yeah, I just joined from this place and I'm doing that job. I'm like, wait, you said that job didn't exist. So now I'm upset. I'm not going. I told him, I'm not going. So for about 2-3 months, I'm like, I'm not going. And they're like, you gotta go. You signed a paper, blah, blah. I'm not going. So finally, they basically released me from the Navy because I was like, I'm not going. I signed under a false pretense. I'm not doing it. As soon as they released me, I walked into the Marine office, said, I want to be a Marine. That was it. I think I was the easiest sell. There was no recruiting going on. I just walked in, want to be a Marine. And the rest is history or a mystery. I'm not sure which one, but yeah, I joined the Marine Corps that way. And it was crazy. I enjoyed it. I had no thoughts of going to the military. I was going to college. Money for college ran out. And I was 20 years old and too old to be in my mother's house. Coming from England at 20 years old, a lot back then, at 16, people were leaving the house and starting their own lives. Here I am, 20 years old, and I'm still in my mom's house. And she was like, it's a different country. Things are different here. And I'm like, I am still in your house and I'm too old to be here. I've got to go. So the easiest way for me to go at that time was to join the military. Game on. I'm going to join. I'm going to go overseas. And that's what I did. So I enjoyed the whole overseas experience. I learned a lot, met a lot of people, and really enjoyed being overseas. And I've spent a lot of time in other countries. And I enjoy it because you meet people and I love people. And in meeting so many people, you start to realize how many similarities you have. But when you can focus on the differences, it's easy to find differences. But it's more fun to find the similarities no matter where you go. Heck, I've been to Russia and found similarities with Russian military personnel like myself. I'm like, wow, I would have never known that if I didn't sit down and talk to you. Like, I would have never known that we have so much in common because we're so busy focusing on our differences that you never get to see those similarities. So loved it. Had a great time. I was enlisted. Then I became an officer, which was great. Totally 2 different careers, totally done 2 different ways. Enjoy them both. And are they the same? No, there are similarities, but they are definitely totally different in my perspective, from my perspective. I love them both. Glad for both experiences. I thought they were hard in their own ways. And I learned some great things that I still use from both of those experiences. And I think it's helped me to be a better leader, just from leadership on both sides of the officer enlisted side of the military spectrum. So I love that. I've done combat. Combat is combat. Not going to talk about it too much, but there's a whole spectrum of things we do. I've done everything from presidential inaugurations to full-scale combat and everything in between. So you learn a lot about people. people at their best and people at their worst, and the resilience of human people. You learn how tough we are. You learn how fragile we are. You learn how futile some things are, but you're still going to do what you have to do. So you learn a lot about yourself in those situations of duress, those situations of someone else's tragedy or your own tragedy. You learn a certain level of humanness. And I think that's why I'm a coach today, is you learn so much about the human experience. And even though we're warriors, and even though we're in other countries and we're doing all these things, at the end of the day, you're dealing with a human being. And I love working with people at the human being level.
That's amazing.
That's me.
I think we can just sign off right here. Because
all right, people, have a great day.
No, it's such a mic drop. And I want to just go back to learning, and well, not necessarily learning, but that realization that we are all human. We all have this opportunity to learn it every single day and relearn it every single day with the interactions that we have out in the world, right?
Yeah.
We become frustrated maybe when we're driving and, something happens, but, the person behind the wheel is actually a human being, just as you're a human being. And it's oftentimes not personal, the things that transpire between strangers. It's just us in our own way, right?
Yes.
And I totally agree. You saying that you had more in common and so many commonalities with a Russian soldier, right? I thought that I would never have anything in common with a Border Patrol agent.
Exactly.
And then I started working with them.
Yes.
And then I was like, I adore you guys, right? Because we're just people and we're out to do a job. And, and I'm not going to be political about this. We are humans.
Yeah.
And we do the best we can with what we have. And quite honestly, I can't judge other people's best. It's not my job. It's not my place, right? It's my job to show up the best that I can be. And if somebody else can glean some message or lesson from that, then amazing. Yeah. Let's, what can happen, right? And I know that with you, Cheddy, that I definitely call you out when I'm like, you're not being your best. You need your best.
Yes, you do.
But I also know that at the heart of who you are, that is exactly how you want to show up for people. Exactly. And one of the first things you said is you like to smile. And I love your smile. And it's the biggest smile. If you ever see photos, he's doing it now. If you ever see photos of Cheddy on stage, you'll know what this what he's meant to do. Quite honestly, he is meant to be up on stage and to share his voice and to share his story. And I am just so excited to see what you do in this next year, because I feel like your smile is going to cross the country.
Absolutely. I got a few invitations to go overseas, which is pretty awesome. So I'm like, yay. So hopefully you'll be seeing me from another country. That would be pretty awesome.
Yes. And if you need an assistant,
you already know it. Let's roll.
Okay. So life coach, or not really life coach, but kind of life coach, because it all comes down to who we are in life.
Yes.
Your focus is leadership, but you mentioned a lot about leadership throughout what you shared already, right?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that. How do you work with leaders?
Leaders, I'm a John Maxwell certified coach. So a lot of what I say comes from John Maxwell's perspective, because I think we're aligned in the way we see the world and the way we think. So leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. John Maxwell will tell you that. And I think it's beautiful that he says that, because it's so simple. It's so simplified, yet it's so complex. Influence is responsibility. Influence is influence over other people, but more importantly, it's influence over yourself. And self-regulation, as Michelle calls it, which I love when she says that. It's self-leadership. It's leadership of yourself and others. It's vitally important to your family life, to your home life, to your personal life, to your health, to every facet of your life, the way you regulate yourself and others is vital to that. So we have to make sure that we are doing our best in those spaces. I just realized that when I was a business growth coach, you start talking to a business owner and they'll say, fix my people. They're not performing very well. And you're like, let's start with you. I mean, and they never want to hear that. And you're like, what do you mean? So I started to have, used to have a shtick, and Michelle knows the shtick. When I go into it, her face will cringe a little bit because that's not where you need to be. I'm like, give me 45 minutes and I'll find you, $20,000 extra in your business or whatever it was. And she'd be like, she would almost like visibly gag when I would say it. But I would do that because I wanted the leaders to sit down and have a conversation with me, because in that conversation, I knew at some point we'd have to talk about, if we want to change your organization, it starts with you. Because you might hear Jack Canfield say this, but the buck stops here. The buck stops with you. If you're the leader, take charge, own it. And if you're going to own it, let's work on you first before we work on the organization. But I realized when I was doing it with the business, my passion is in that space with the individual. You change an individual's mindset, their passion, their desires, their motivations, manage their fears, increase their confidence and inspiration and motivation. The sky's the limit for them. Once they realize how much power they have intrinsically, and you get them in that space where they're operating in that space of power that they have, they're going to just keep going forward. And I'll tell you, a bittersweet thing for me is when you have a client who you have got to a certain space and they no longer need you. It's tough. It's like, you're like, yay, but I'm going to miss this relationship. Oh, but yay, because I got you where you wanted to be. So it's a bittersweet win where you get them to the point where they're empowered. But it's also a level of sadness and grief that you've lost the client and that relationship, that interaction that you've had for the past year or two. And then, so it's this dichotomy of happiness and sadness when someone elevates and grows. But that's what we do. My goal is to get you to the space where you get to see and realize how awesome and absolutely amazing you actually, really, and truly are.
Oh, I love that. And I totally agree. I always look at leadership as a pyramid.
Yeah.
And it's divided in equal 3 sort of parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the base is self-leadership, because that's where you should be spending, 1, the most amount of your time, and 2, without that foundation, leadership within an organization will crumble.
Yes.
So the base is self-leadership. The center is going to be leading others. So your direct reports.
Yes.
And then the very top is leading the entire organization.
Yes.
And so again, if you don't have that foundation constructed, the entire thing collapses. If you're missing that center piece where you're leading others in a powerful way, you're able to empower your direct reports.
Ooh.
You're able to delegate effectively and communicate effectively with those people that you manage directly.
Yes.
Then how can you effectively run an entire organization? You lose sight of the big picture because you get too much in the menial when you're really managing everybody, since you can't effectively delegate.
Do you see why I'm a fan of Michelle's? Like, you see why I'm a fan? And I'm like, we need to work together. She gets it in a way that most don't. And she understands it in ways that, she is so good in this space, people. I'm just putting that out there, shameless plug, but Michelle, you're phenomenal.
Thank you. No, I also, I love analogies. I love visuals. I love all those things because that's really how my brain operates. So if I can paint the picture within my brain, I like to try to communicate it. It doesn't always work out, but I do my best.
Yeah. Yes.
And then we just go from there. But I know from the first week that Cheddy and I first started talking, it was always about leadership. And when he had that shtick, like he said, I wouldn't roll my eyes. I would just say every single time, but that's not what you do. That's not what you do. And it was a bait and switch, if you will. And so if you're selling in at this one point in this one area, I'm like, they're not going to honor and value what you actually bring. And I'm like, and what you bring is amazing. It's an incredible package for an organization to have somebody who really, 1, can hold space or a high level leader, and then help them to really see sort of their blind spots, right? Because sometimes when we are in it, when we're in the day to day and we think, man, that's a really difficult employee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they might be a difficult employee, so to speak, but where are you potentially losing sight of your opportunities? And how can we close that gap? Because if you can effectively manage a difficult employee, then you can crush it with the rest of the team.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I always say, what's the gift and opportunity with these difficult circumstances? And so that's what Cheddy does. He helps organizations, particularly leaders of the organization, to see that opportunity. How can we help, facilitate and help these managers work effectively so that I can be my best self as the head of this organization? And to boot, he will talk to the whole team, and you're just like, you can't help but have the biggest smile on your face when you're like listening to him, because he has this huge smile and his mannerisms are a little quirky. And then he's got this really odd accent that is somewhat English and somewhat New York.
Somewhat Jamaican,
somewhat Jamaican. It's amazing. So he's motivational, he's inspirational, and he has a lot of stories that create so much depth and layering and richness in his experiences and his life that when he finally writes the book, that I know I just like am throwing that out there because he's not even in the works of it. But when he finally writes the book, you're just going to be like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
And while his stories may not be unique unto themselves, like they aren't necessarily, he's not the only person that's experienced some of the things that he's experienced, but the way that he handles it and the way that he's moved forward with his life and the way that he shares his stories is like, I just can't wait. Just write the damn book. Excuse my language.
It's coming. Fine. Hey, do you hear the pen?
Yeah. Ghostwriters out there, reach out to Cheddy. Thank you very much.
We do already. That's so funny you said that. Thanks. My LinkedIn box is going to be blown up now.
There you go. There you go. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about, what keeps you going? What keeps you motivated in this area? And we know that there are a ton of public speakers and there's a ton of business coaches, but we can't always look at the competition. And oh my gosh, I'm totally stacking questions, which is a huge coach no-no.
Game on.
So what keeps you going in this arena? One, knowing that there's just so many people out there, but two, like that you have so much going on. I honestly can't wrap my brain around all the crazy different areas of your life that you have going on concurrently. Like, how do you just keep it going?
It's funny. I'm going to answer the second part first, just because I think it dovetails.
Okay, yeah, those weren't even related, so I apologize.
Well, as you know, I'm of Jamaican descent, and if you ever watched In Living Color in the late 80s and 90s, they were the Headleys. It was the West Indian family that always had at least 3 jobs, and if you had less than 3 jobs, you were all kinds of lazy. Well, that was only funny to me because that was real. That was a real thing. I think I'm wired that I'm always in my mind. If I'm doing just one job, I'm being very lazy. Even in the military, I had a car parts business. I was doing equipment leasing and financing while I was in the Marine Corps. So I was doing other jobs because it always felt like if I was just doing one, I was being lazy. So I'm maybe it's hyperactivity. I'm not sure, but I like to just do stuff because if I'm not doing what else am I going to do? I mean, I've got 24 hours in a day. I've got 168 hours in a week. I might as well do something in that time. So I realized that I like helping people. I do. If you ask me what my purpose for being on this earth is, I'm going to tell you it's to leave this earth better than I found it. That is what it is. So everything I do, I try to tie it into that goal. If I'm working on something, I'm working with somebody, if I'm trying to help someone to support or assist, am I helping to make society better in my efforts? That keeps you going. But beyond that, I realized as a leader who was leading for a while, doing really well, was experiencing life at the same time, and nobody's exempt from life. I was suffering in silence. I'm at the top of my professional game at doing great things, loving it. Life is awesome. And yet when I go home, I am suffering in silence. I mean, I'm talking about torment, misery. I was going through a divorce. And you've heard this story, Michelle. I'm going to go through the quick version, but I was going through a divorce. So I'm losing my family identity. I was retiring from the Marine Corps. I'm losing my occupational 2 decades worth of my occupation and that identity. I'm losing that too. And then if that wasn't bad enough, I lost my sister. I'm losing part of what I consider my rock, my foundation, my family identity. Those three things individually are manageable. At the same time, they were devastating, Michelle. I was done. I was a shell of a human being. I was so broken. But who could I tell? Who could I tell? I told very few people. And you were afraid that you couldn't tell somebody because of your position and your leadership and your, the face that people see. But I would go home in abject, not just misery, but pain. Pain. It was almost like I would feel like crying, but yet no tears would fall. And it's hard to explain it. It was almost like dry crying, where you can feel that your body's doing the crying motion, but no tears would come. Or I would just pull over and just sit in my car and just sit there, spaced out, and then recharge and go back. I remember being overseas and just on the weekends, I'd be at work, being who I am, all bubbly and personality filled. I would go home on a Friday evening, would not say a word. If you can imagine, not utter a word out of my mouth until Monday morning when I got back to work. Yep. In hindsight, if you know me, you know I talk way too much. Michelle's always like, all right, got to get off the phone. Dude, it's been an hour. Get off the phone. I like to talk. I'm going to talk all the time. I would go home and not say a word. Cognitively, I wonder what that did. But how low do you have to be a chatty catty like me, not talking? How much are you suffering? I remember there was a point where I didn't sleep in my own bed for like a year. It was there. It was nice. It became a desk. It became a place to put my clothes. But I never slept in my bed because I just didn't feel like it was part of who I was anymore. I slept on a couch for a whole year, my own couch. I went in the bedroom. I sat on the bed, but I never slept in it because it didn't feel like it was home anymore. That was a place where I realized I was suffering in silence. When I started to open up about it, thinking that I'm the only person in the world going through this, the nods I would get from people who were like, yeah, me too. I'm like, wait, you went through this too? You realize you're not alone. And then I started speaking about these events when I was having public speaking events, just telling people about my life. And I'm a responsive speaker. So I like looking into the crowd, front, middle, back. I like to try and catch people's eyes. I'm looking in the room and I can tell that people aren't just listening to me. They're listening to me in a way where you can see the look on their face where they're saying, oh, wow, he knows what I'm going through. You would see you'll see people out there in the audience looking at you like, how do you know what I'm going through every night? Once I started to see that look on their faces, I realized there are people in this space that need to be helped. And who better to help you than someone who's been through it? Someone who's led at multiple levels of multiple organizations. Someone who has suffered in silence. Somebody who's been broken. Somebody who's built themselves back. And somebody who knows how to deal with these things. Because some of these things come, some they go. They come and go. Life it vacillates. And you have to learn how to navigate these highs and lows, these ebbs and flows of life. That's what I like to do. I think a lot of people are in that space, Michelle, as you know, and I'm just here to help them through it. I'm no guru, but I can be like, hey, been through this. Let me see if I can help you a little bit. I want to be that person. Let's walk through it together. Let's grow together.
I love it. And I'm just going to keep saying that. And I know every time you stop talking, I'm like, I love it. And I think one of the things that I have just always pushed you on and challenged you on is to keep sharing your story, because I know you share the stories that feel safe, and that there's deeper, richer stories that are part of you that tell an even greater story of overcoming and resilience, that while people may not personally connect with your experience, right? Because it's not, again, you're not the only person that's experienced it, but it's something that people can truly see and just be honestly wowed by, right? Yeah. And I'm not going to tell his stories for him. So he knows what I'm talking about, quite frankly. And I know everybody who's going to reach out and be like, what is she talking about? And he will tell the story in his book and or when he's ready. But it's only one of the many experiences that he has, and the way that he conveys it is so powerful. So bravo to you for getting up and sharing the story of loss and difficulty in transition, which is, I talk a lot about self-concept, and that's kind of where my sweet spot is, self-concept and identity, and through transition and whatever that transition is. And when Cheddy started sharing those stories with me about how he had that sort of, we call like the trifecta of pain, essentially, I was like, I get it. Yeah. And people can be lost in that space for years. And when he shares about feeling numb, yes, that totally resonated with me, right? Yeah. Where you had to be a certain way. Like I had to be a certain way with my son, and I had to be a certain way in my job until I wasn't able to do that anymore. And that's when I was like, wait a minute, I can't do this anymore. Right. Yeah. And that's when it was like, it was my own version of rock bottom, if you will. Yeah. That aha, like sort of like hitting yourself over the head. It's just like, come on, let's figure this shit out. Because excuse my language again. Sorry. This one's definitely going to have the explicit tag next to it. So figure it out, because we can. Because the one side of human is that we're always somewhere in the middle, right? And we're always moving from one end of the spectrum to the other end. If one end of the spectrum is joy and happiness and things are amazing, and the other end is just crap and pain and suffering,
misery. Yeah.
We're somewhere in the middle, moving along that spectrum all the time. It could be day to day, hour to hour, right? Oh, yeah. But knowing that you're always in motion and you can always change. Yeah. Right? We don't have to stay in one place. So I just commend you for getting up and sharing your story. And while he's speaking specifically about experiences with identity loss and resilience, his connection to leaders is totally in line and aligned with that message. And one of the reasons isn't just because he has experience as a leader within the military on multiple levels, but it's also because we as leaders think that we have this concept of ourselves, right? That I am a leader, or I am the CEO, or I am whatever that leadership position is. But if we're not actually embodying that as a leader, embodying that self-concept of a leader, of others, of a leader, of an organization, then we will fail on so many fronts. Yes. So what he's talking about is holding these leaders up to a certain expectation that in themselves that meets their actions and their behaviors and their thoughts. And so with that, they can then effectively lead the organization.
Whoa. I'm going to put my mic down because we are done. That right there was gold, Michelle.
I can write your copy.
I think you should. Yeah, just make sure you put my name at the bottom of that. That's all.
Yeah. It's interesting because coaches, whether they're relationship coaches or leadership coaches, or for me, identity and self-concept coach, right? We do a lot of the same thing, and yet we do it in a unique way. So Cheddy resonates with people who see him for who he is, right? This really energetic, high vibing, positive individual that has a depth of experience with resilience and a depth of experience with leadership. And if they're like, wow, that connects with my idea of how I want to show up as a leader, he is the man for you.
Wow. I appreciate that. I am Cheddy Matthews, and I endorse this message.
Seriously, you should run for office. Anyway, another side note.
Yes,
maybe someday.
I am definitely running from office. Yes, I'm doing that.
Yes, I know.
I say that, but I'm actually running for office at school this week. So,
well, amazing. Okay, so, oh my gosh, there's just so much we could talk about, and this could go on for hours and hours and hours. And so, I don't want to do that to our listeners. And you've shared amazing, just gems already, and that's what you do.
No worries.
Okay, what is the message that Cheddy would love our listeners to walk away with?
Everybody has a superpower. It's funny. I'll go right into it. Forget thinking about it. Everybody has a superpower. I believe you know this. I think everybody has an attribute or a thing about them that makes them absolutely amazing. But that absolute amazingness that we have is found in our most authentic selves. Your authenticity is where your superpower lays. A lot of times we try to be other people and do other things, but we have a certain magic that is intrinsic to us. And if we're allowed to let that voice, let that power come out of us, we will see and experience our highest and best selves. I really do believe your highest and best self is your most authentic self. Allow yourself to be in that space. It might be scary, it may be fun, it may make you seem a little different and quirky. I know different and quirky. I've always been different and quirky. It is what it is. But it is my space of power, and I like to operate in power. So I will be quirky if that's what it takes, because I realize that is where my highest and best Cheddy resides.
I completely agree. Let's bring the quirk. Whatever that means.
That's so funny.
Okay, so Cheddy, how can they reach you?
You can reach me in a few different ways. Email is a good way. But my website, cheddymatthews.com, is a great place to do it. You can meet me on the Winning Inside podcast. So winninginside.io is the URL. Hit us up there. That will be this podcast. You can see me on social media at Cheddy Speaks. And if not, you can just find me on the street somewhere. I would love to come to your office and come speak. I love speaking. It's what I do. I love to engage an organization, to get them for a few moments on one accord, whatever that is. It's a great spot for you to spearhead an initiative, to start a new season, to start a new program, to have someone come in there and just rally the troops, get them all motivated, get them just to kind of get aligned. Talk about a situation that you may be going through in a way that's non-threatening. You never know. I'm here to help. I'm here to serve. And if I can do that at the group level or the individual level, reach out. Let me know how I can be of value to you.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing yourself and your message and just your joy today. So grateful for you every day.
You have no idea how much I appreciate you, Michelle. Thank you so much. It's so much fun to talk with you. You're such a safe space, and I always feel like I'm just so much better after our interaction. So thank you for that. Thank you for just being you, which is personified phenomenalness. And that's not a real word, but it makes sense. You know, Michelle is absolutely phenomenal. I make up words all the time. I used to call them Cheddyisms. Like, that's what you do. I got that from my sister, by the way. She did that. She would make up words. I was like, that's pretty cool. I'm going to start making up words too.
Aww.
So,
do it. Yeah.
Phenomenalness.
We'll make notes of everything you just shared in the show notes as well. So if you're curious about how to get in contact with Cheddy, please go to the show notes for this podcast and scroll to the very bottom, and you will find the different ways that you can reach Cheddy out in the world.
Yes.
Appreciate all right. You guys. Yeah, appreciate you too.
Yes.
Well, I am still inviting you all to join us in the challenge of shifting 500 minds in 50 days. And we have just one week left. Actually, when this airs,
Whoa.
it's going to be less than a week.
Yeah, it's going to be days.
I love it. So if you have heard any podcast, or if this podcast resonates with you, please share it with 5 friends. And if you want to share with us, send us an email directly to winninginsidepodcast@gmail.com and let us know who you shared the podcast with. If you'd like more information of how to work with us. So let's go help 500 people transform their mindset and just watch what happens.
Stay amazing, folks.
Thank you for listening to Winning Inside with Cheddy Matthews and Michelle Wickman. If you enjoyed today's show, please make sure to click the follow button, rate and review at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can connect with Cheddy and Michelle at winninginside.io. Keep listening. Another episode is coming soon.